Welcome to the Maximus podcasts with your hosts, Bobby Maximus and Joe Sabula. We have a very special guest here today, a good friend of ours, Sara Azari. She's one of the world's best lawyers.
The world's best lawyer.
The world's best lawyer, the first person I'd call if I was facing any type of criminal charge or civil charge for that matter. She's on TV every 2 seconds, but we have no interest in talking to you about law today, Sara. We want to talk to you about the personal training industry because you're also an expert in that industry and an expert from the client perspective. Joe and I were talking about you the other day. You're a person who's literally worked with some of the best trainers in the entire world that you've had access to. And in a day and age where people talk about certifications, they talk about education, their CSCS, their exercise science degree. You've had on-the-job training or mentorship from the best of the best in the industry, whether that be
including you guys,
including us, but
especially us.
Tell us some of the people you've worked with. Like I know you've worked with Don Saladino. We're good friends. Who else have you worked with? Because you've worked with the best of the best.
Yeah, I've worked with, I'm lucky, right? I'm lucky that I had access to people like you guys, Brett Bartholomew, who wrote a book on the art of coaching, literally, like because his background is in communications and his degree is in how to listen and process, and how that is so important in training and physical training. I've worked with Greg Neely, who's fantastic also in LA, and Don, of course, Don Saladino. You guys, I'm friends with CT Fletcher as well, old school. But, I think ultimately for me, I've been in and out of gyms all over the world. Even when I go on vacation, I try to find the best person at the best gym. And that's just my discipline. But, for 20 years, that like seriously training in the last 2 decades. And the reason I really wanted to talk to you guys today was because we had this conversation a few years ago. We sort of started to have this conversation about, the type and caliber of people that you run into in the fitness industry that call themselves coaches and trainers, et cetera. And I'm now at a point where I've had a series of new experiences in that realm that really just got me going. And I was texting you, Bobby, saying like, oh my God, we got to talk about this because it's driving me insane. And I really didn't want this to be a whining session. I really want it to be a solution for your viewers. So I think that even though we're going to talk about the bullshit, I think we're going to also leave people with some tips on, like how not to fall into those traps, right? That we're going to talk about. So, but one thing I want to say, and I think you guys are going to relate to this, we're all sort of like-minded. We have the discipline. We are structured. We probably eat the same thing every day. We train certain number of days, certain number of hours. And I've been reading the work of Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you can see this book. Yep. This one is The Obstacle is the Way, but I also read Discipline is Destiny. One of my really good friends, Daniel Robay, just turned me on to this guy. He's like a modern day philosopher, stoic, guy who writes these books. And when I read this, it was in the middle of this whole thing that happened with my training. And I was like, you know what? This obstacle is just an opportunity for me to change what I'm doing, to do it better, do it with a different person, and find a solution, right? And that's what I hope that your viewers get today is like, these are just obstacles you need to be aware of to go around, right? Yeah. And if you have the discipline, and if you have the discipline in the kitchen and the gym, you'll make it. It's just that you need to be aware of the bullshit, and avoid it. So that's what I'm hoping to talk to you guys about today.
Well, I want to say that can be difficult too, because you mentioned Greg Miele, who owns Heart and Hustle Gym. Like it's funny because when I was in LA, you can go to that gym and he's the person that Jay-Z calls when he's on tour to have a trainer. Like Greg's one of the most notable trainers in the world, or he's trusted with a multi-million-dollar athlete. You can pay him and go to his gym if you have access to him, or you can walk down the street and you can go to whatever big box gym there is, and you can get stuck with a 21-year-old kid who has no clue what he's doing. But for your average
Well,
member
look,
of the public, they might not know the difference.
Yeah.
right. They don't know the difference. And also, not everyone can afford what, Heart and Hustle charges, for example. I used to train with Greg, but it's not so much even, yeah, he trains Adele, he trains Jay-Z, he trains trains King James when he's off season. But, I know, I love Greg, but I know what I can get from Greg. What I can get from Greg is strength and conditioning, right? Greg is never going to train me in volume work that bodybuilders do, which is sort of what I'm drawn to right now. I like physique building, right? That's what I'm into right now. So I don't go to Greg to get that result because I know that's not his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not even how much he charges. It's everyone has a style of training. What I don't like is when people, and this is not Greg, this is other people, don't listen. Someone shows up, Joe, and says, you know what? I just want to lose weight. I just want to get skinny. I just want to tone my muscles and just kind of stay there, right? That's a different workout than me going in and saying, I want to get more lean mass. I want to build muscle. It's like, it's a different eating. It's a different training. And I believe a lot of these people they only know one thing and they execute it on everybody, no matter what it is that their goal is. And so my thing is like, if your viewers are watching this, my first thing is figure out what you want to look like, figure out what you want to be, figure out what you want out of your training, right? Because there's a different plan for you and there's a different trainer for you, right? So like, I don't know, Bobby, you do crazy shit. Like you jump on, I don't know, you jump on 40 feet boxes. And I'm like, I don't care what I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Right. So I'm never going to come to you and be like, don't do that. I know that is your thing, that's how you work out, or your wife is a power builder. If I wanted to do power building, I'd be coming to her. You know what I'm saying?
So,
and I think people are lost because they're like, so long as I have a trainer, the trainer's going to give me the magic result. And that's just not how it works.
Yeah. So let's start there, because you're an interesting case to talk to, because you're an expert in the fitness industry. Like, you've had on the job training with the best. Again, people can have all the certifications in the world, but it doesn't mean they know how to train a person. You've been around the block, you've been with the best. You could arguably train people yourself, and you could arguably train yourself. So for somebody like you that's got such a knowledge base, let's start with, how do you find a trainer? If you need somebody new, what do you do?
Look, in this day and age of social media, right, there's good and bad. The good is someone can start looking and finding people like you, finding people like, Brett, but they can also fall into traps, because you can make your social media curated in a way that looks really good, and you look like you know what you're doing. You look like you can execute and listen and do what the client needs. But then in person, it doesn't turn out like that, right? But there is a power in social media, in content, that makes it easier for people to see. You don't have to call around and be like, do you have a trainer? Do you know somebody? Where can I see what he does? And, you have it at your fingertips on your phone. You have it on your Instagram. You have it on YouTube. You have it everywhere. So that makes the shopping process, I think, more accessible and easier. But that's then when you have to start doing your homework, know what you want. Number one, are you trying to just get ready for a wedding? Or is this now going to be a lifestyle? If it's a lifestyle, what is it you're trying to gain? Are you trying to completely change your body and be a power lifter and compete? Are you trying to do physique competitions? Are you trying to do strength and conditioning, like more of an athletics style type of thing? Because that's gonna put you on the track of the pool of people that are right for you, And then my thing is literally, and I've done this myself, I go to people that follow that person, and I message them, And I go, it seems like, you're training with this person, or used to train with this person, because I see your little clips at the gym with this person. Like, can we talk? Like, what do you like about him? What do you not like about him? What were your goals? Like, I know it takes time, and I know it's a process, but literally, like, if you're dialed in, and if you really want, if you're just trying to waste your money and, be like, oh, I have a trainer, that's a different story. I'm talking about people that are serious, people that are serious about marrying the right person, in getting to their goals. I would start literally asking people that have trained with that person, asking their peers. Like, I've done it with you guys, when I have like had questions about somebody. Hey, do you guys know this guy? Do you think he's the right guy? Am I going to get, is this a good fit for me? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So you got to research, just with like anything else.
Well,
that's the first step.
Even there, Sarah, like, if you're like, hey, is this guy right for me? My first question is going to be like, well, what are you trying to get? Right? Like, what's your goal? And so I think that just reiterates, if you know what you want, that's going to make this whole search a lot easier. And there's a whole nother layer on top of this, which you touched on earlier. It's the communication. Because they could be a fantastic coach, but if they can't communicate with you, it doesn't matter. So you have to have,
or listen to you.
Exactly. Because that's funny. I was actually talking to my daughter about this just yesterday. Like, communication takes three things, right? It takes a messenger, it takes a medium, and it takes a receiver. And so if you're not the right kind of receiver for that message, like, it's not going to come through. So if your trainer is talking to you and he's telling you things and you really don't have any clue what's going on, like, are they really coaching you? Right? Have they tried to, you mentioned earlier, somebody comes in who's just like, trying to get ready for a wedding, probably has a different communication style than somebody who's trying to win a powerlifting meet anyway. And so one coach is probably not right for both. The coach is going to have a tendency to be able to communicate a certain way, one way or the other. And if you know what you want, then kind of the kind of communication that you're going to need. Is this a coach that's there for, emotional support, a lot of hand holding? Is this somebody who's going to be patient with you as you're learning your way through a whole new process? Or is this somebody who's hardcore and is going to hold your feet to the fire and expect you to know these things and execute with minimal motivation? That's a totally like different communication style. And if you're not able to receive it, even if you're swayed by what you see on social media, you see Bobby Maximus working out and you're like, man, this guy's awesome. I love his physique. I love everything about him. I want to be like him. But you're not the right person for that kind of training. It's not going to work. It's not going to work out. Bobby's going to feel bad about it. You're going to feel bad about it. Like, you got to do due diligence on that.
Listen, and then listening by the coach or trainer is very basic, right? Like, for example, I've had this happen to me where I've said, listen, I wake up at 4 a.m. I'm here at 7 a.m. And so by 7 a.m., I have warmed up. I've done my mobility. I have gone on a treadmill, or I've walked around the block, whatever, with my dogs. And they'll be like, still need to go on the treadmill for 10 minutes. It's like, bitch, I'm paying you 200, 150, whatever it is, right? You're not putting me on the treadmill for 10 minutes because that's what you do with everybody. Like, listen to me. I just told you, I wake up at 4. I walk, I warm up. Like, I don't need the treadmill, and it's just very basic, like, just completely sort of ignoring what that individual's routine is and what their needs are. And instead spending a big chunk of, 10 minutes is a couple of movements, right? Reps, whatever. And so that's where it's really, and my latest experience that sort of drove me to blow up Bobby's phone was, I was working with, like, Bobby mentioned, what'd you say, the guy's 27 or something? Close in age. But all due respect, it's not the age. I've also had people in my life who've been young, but wise, right? But they just don't have the same amount of experience. They don't have the same number of years. That's a fact, right? And this individual was a bodybuilder. And so literally did not really know how to write a program, because I have a program, but 2 of the days are my own upper body days that I do by myself. And then the 3 other days I do with a trainer, because I do need that extra push on my leg days, on my glute days. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have the discipline, But I know that if it's number one, it's going to take me twice as long to put the plates on, take them off, like move over here, get that, so I need that assistance. And maybe one day, hopefully I'll progress, and I don't. But right now I do. So 3 days I do, with somebody. Well, this person was great for that, even though I don't think that his programs were, when you look at a program, you can tell if someone knows how to write a program or not. I don't think that he did, but it was enough of a guide for me, and it was volume work. But it came to a point where during the session, he was posting Instagram, literally. He did not have an assistant, so I know he was the one posting, because I would leave the gym. I'd be like, oh, that's during my session. Okay. He was posting content. Then he was prepping for shows. He's trying to get to Olympia. So he was prepping. So the water intake, the supplements, whatever I'll say, whatever it is that happens to your body right before a show, he would be in the bathroom peeing every 10 minutes for a long time. And I was like, wait a second, I just spent my entire session and I saw this guy for maybe 10 minutes, And then and most of his clients were like me, they're like women who want to build their bodies, actually I'm probably the only one that didn't compete, but all of them were competing, and he literally like dumped all of us and said he's moving to San Diego. We're like, when? He's like, end of this week. And I'm like, okay, well, were you gonna get somebody for us? Like, were you gonna give us some notice? Like, so my problem is also with the lack of accountability, with the lack of reliability. And I believe that somebody who's out there coaching people that are serious about their fitness, not people like, for a wedding, but like people that really want to change their lives, is that, if I wake up one morning and I decide, you know what, Joe, I don't feel good, I'm not coming in, you're still going to charge me because it's the time that you reserved for me. And I will pay you because that's the right thing to do. But then when you want to dodge and go about your life, there's just zero accountability. Like, it's amazing to me. I'm like, do I do that to a client? Like, I have problems with a client. I need to get rid of a case. There's ways I never leave them out and dry. You know what I mean? I don't do that.
It's just basic professionalism, right? It's just holding yourself to a professional standard and holding your clients to that standard as well. And as a client, holding your coach to a professional standard. Like, why should it be different? Why should it be different than making a doctor's appointment? You wouldn't do that to a doctor, and a doctor wouldn't do that to a patient. Like,
that's
should not be different.
The issue, is that I think everyone's doing it for money. And we all know that if you're doing something only for money, there's problems. You have to be doing it because you actually enjoy doing it. If you don't enjoy being in a gym with a client, do something else with fitness. There's tons of things you can do, but don't be in there with a client, because that's a responsibility. And so how do I, you mentioned me and like I'm not a professional fitness person like you guys, but I'm a professional client. I'm a professional fitness client because I've been doing this for a long time. And aside from that research and everything, you're going to laugh at this, but I literally tell the person, a new person that I connect with, I go, I'm going to pay you for the hour, like, your time. Can we go have coffee, like near the gym? It has nothing to do with, your style or whatever. I want to have a conversation with you. And because they're so about money, I'm like, I'll pay for your time to have coffee with you. Okay. Let's go sit and talk. And I literally do this little powwow. Here are my goals. Here's my schedule. Here's what I like. I don't go on the treadmill. I've already done that in the morning. Like, literally, like, I spell everything out. And listen, you can think I'm nuts. It's okay. But that's what I feel like I need that, because if I start and I go in and that basic conversation has not taken place, all kinds of shit happens. Like,
do you do that as a lawyer with a client? Will you sit down and just lay out, like, kind of, here's the deal. You're hiring me. Here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's the reasonable expectation.
Ask me for that.
Yeah. And so it makes perfect sense. Again, why should it be any different? Because it's a fitness situation. Why should the standards be lax? Like, you deserve that. You're paying for that session. And especially for a trainer who's, charging good money for that. I feel like that's a reasonable expectation,
I
and
mean,
people
it's a
should have it.
consultation, right? It's a
Yeah.
consultation. Exactly. But in your world, and I'm totally fine with it. In your world, you know, it's their time. They want to get paid for it, and I'm fine paying for it. But to me, it's worth paying for that hour of having coffee and talking outside the gym, and sort of setting these ground rules. I also want to know about their rules, right? Like they might say, I have a 48-hour cancellation policy. I don't do this. I only do this. You know, it's about being candid, being candid about what you offer, and me being candid about what I need. And if there's a fit, we work together. And if there isn't, we go out our way. You know, I've just found that is productive. And I that's what I want your viewers to know. It sounds retarded. I'm sorry. I know it sounds like a lot, right? But it's worth it, because you don't want to be going in thinking that you're not really putting your mind into changing your lifestyle, being disciplined, getting results, and then being disappointed because you're with the wrong person.
Or because you never set appropriate boundaries. You had no clear and reasonable expectations, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know what the rules were. So you end up in that position where, just like any interpersonal relationship, you just get awkward because like you're kind of upset about something, but you don't really want to say anything because you didn't really say that was against the rules. And it's like, just have that conversation up front. Now you know what you're paying for. They know what they're getting. Like everything is clear. And if there's an issue, again, this just helps communication between you and a coach. And if they're not open to that, guess what? They're not a good coach.
And I think that, you know, we talked about this first time we did your podcast was the jack of all trades, you know, the trainer that will do your food prep and write your program and train you in the gym and do your supplements. And it's like, okay, you know, I don't go to a orthopedic surgeon for my heart, right? Everyone has a specialty. So all of us right now can write out a basic meal plan, depending on what the person's like goals are, right? If they're trying to lean out or build or whatever, like to some extent we can do that. And we can, I don't know, Bobby can push us. What's that steak thing you sponsor?
Oh, I got all kinds of meat sponsors. I just eat
the steak,
carnivore diet,
the beef.
Yeah, the steak that you're always like, my mouth waters every time I see it. But you know, like you could throw that in there. I mean, you know, but like if someone has a particular, like for example, like I found out, this is not too long ago during COVID, that I actually burn fat. This is based on my VO2 test and my resting metabolic RMR test. I found out that I burn fat at a slow, steady rate. So jogging and running and hiking and all that work, like my heart rate shoots up, is actually does not work for me. What works for me is a 40-minute slow walk, like Lance Armstrong does this sort of training, right? And so my point is like, what's good for someone else may not be good for my body, right? So I just think that people who really are serious about being fit, eating right, being well, they need to seek a plan that is specialized. And that means going to different people for different needs, you know, not getting your supplements from your trainer. You know, I mean, he could definitely give you feedback on it, but I don't know that that's the right person. Maybe your nutritionist is the right person, you know? But anyway, that's, I don't want to be, like I said, every obstacle is an opportunity. And I've been looking at this as an obstacle. I've met somebody that I'm going to try out next week. So I'm fingers crossed, like, you know, I'll be on a path. He can only do 2 days, which look, I'm looking at that like, okay, get your ass in. You were doing 3 days, now do 2 days and do the other 3 days on your own. Like it's pushing me, right, to try to change in a way, right? And I still have the 2 days with that. So hopefully it'll work out. But like, I really didn't want to bitch about this. I really wanted to be able to say that, first of all, like, know what your goal is. Then look for the person. Use social media as a tool. That's where it's positive, right? And then start looking and snooping at who is using them and researching. And if you know other people in the field, if you have a nutritionist you trust or some other professional, ask them, because their clients know that work with those other people. And that's a good way of figuring out who's right. And then test them out, interview them, do that 1 hour consultation. Communicate, say what you want and say what you don't like, and listen to what they have to say about that. Because then you can gauge whether if the person's really resistant and is like, oh, I know that, but I still want you to do the burpees and the Turkish, get ups or whatever. It's like, no, that's kind of not my program.
So I want to interrupt you on that note. How does somebody like you deal with intimidation and ego? Because, and I'm going to set this up here, I look at you as a dream client. A, you have money, so I'm not worried about you being flaky and canceling in and out. 2, you have a huge knowledge base. So everything I'm going to tell you, you're going to understand, you're going to get, you're going to be able to execute. You do stuff on your own. You don't have an issue with dedication. You've got an incredible physique, like all the things that I want in a trainee, you have. But I'm kind of a different person.
Yeah.
For a younger person that doesn't have the experience that I have, maybe now they're dealing with a client who maybe knows more than them, who has worked with trainers they look up to and is really self-directed. That can be intimidating. And their ego gets in the way when it's like, well, I want you to do this. And you're like, well, no, this works better. How do you deal with those things?
Well, here's the thing. I think some of that is perception. I think people that have confidence don't get intimidated, but that confidence comes with experience. So you're right. But I tried to, with the person that I was saying just decided to move and just was in the bathroom the whole time. Of course, I toned it down with him. And I really looked at him as someone who was just helping me, pushing me, and just, that's it. Like my expectations were gauged. Okay. But I think that that's where you realize whether you're, aligned or not. Like that's where this person that I'm going to start working with, it's not ideal because I got to drive a little further. It's a Gold's Gym that I have to go to, which I'm not a fan of. But it's a trade-off because he is older. He's in his 40s. He used to be a bodybuilder. He works for ESPN now. He's around athletes. Like I feel like, by the way, you're also spending time with this person. You don't want to spend time with an asshole. I don't care how good they are or how, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I start early in the morning. I don't want to start my day with an asshole, right? So it's like, I know that, like you said, Bobby, I know that I can communicate with him without being concerned that he's going to be offended or like he has an ego and he doesn't understand. I'm respectful in the way I communicate, but I make sure that the person knows, I wasn't born yesterday. Yeah. I know what I need. I'm just being frank. There's a difference between I guess I'm very frank, but I try not to be disrespectful because it's just a matter of, listen, if someone came to me, I always think I'm your dream client. I would appreciate somebody that to some degree is not an amateur. Mm-hmm. That I don't have to spend that much time on that learning curve because we're kind of talking the same language. I think it should be good for the trainer. They should be grateful that they have somebody like that, as opposed to, right? Well, you would think my business. I like when my clients, it's sometimes easier when they've been arrested before and they've had cases before because they know, and I they have expectations that are gauged and they know what I'm talking about. Someone who's never been in the system, sometimes it's harder to manage because, I have to kind of educate them and set the expectations. So I think that it's like any other relationship. It's like you're spending time with the person. You have to communicate with the person. You have to trust the person. You have to know that they're fit for you. And otherwise it doesn't work,
Well, I think we need to flip that around though, too, because you have to value this process. There's a certain element of you get what you pay for with a trainer as well. So if you're like, hey, I want my trainer to be certified and professional and timely and have, clear professional boundaries, don't go out and think that you're going to get that for $20 an hour.
No.
you know, and it's like, if that's all that you're willing to spend, well, then how important is all that other stuff? Like, how important is
But
this process to you
that's
overall?
why, Joe, I believe in now with you guys do this too. Like you got the online programs and online coaching, and all that. I believe that ideally you want a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
You want a hybrid where you work with somebody one-on-one to the extent you can afford it. But don't be like, okay, well, I can only afford 1 or 2 days a week, so that's all I'm going to do. No, you got to put in more work, right? The more work you put in, the more results you get. But you do the rest maybe online, or you do the rest on your own after you've learned your form and, you've been corrected and all that stuff. Because most people can't afford to do one-on-one with the right person, at the right price, right? Most people can't do that. But that doesn't mean you go, oh, fuck it, like that. I'm gonna, I'll do what I can afford. Because no, what you can afford is different than like the monetary.
Well, and again, like you're driven and you know what you want. And so it's easier for you to be able to demand something out of a trainer when you go into that contract, when you go into that relationship. For somebody who maybe isn't so sure, like they know that fitness is important, they know that they don't know a whole lot about it, they have no experience in the field, they're kind of taking this like, I'm going to wade into it. And I think what I take away from what you just said was, don't wade into it 2 days a week. Like, plan on doing this stuff every day. Make fitness a really valuable, important part of your life, and then utilize the coach when you have access to them. And the rest of the time, there's other tools, and that allows you to play, to figure things out, to come up with the right questions to ask.
I mean, just like what I'm doing right now, it's not because he only has 2 days and I wanted 3 days. So whatever, I'll take the 2 days and I'll add the other day to my solo days. I'm making it work. I work out 5 days a week, and I have 2 rest days where I still do my walks and stuff. I do my cardio, but I'm not in the gym. And so what I'm doing is, this is somebody that I researched, that I realized knows how to write the program that I need for my goals. So I'm giving it a shot. So I'm doing the 2 days that are heavy leg days with him, doing a 3rd leg day on my own, and my upper days on my own. And I'll see how that works, and I'll definitely see how that works on my body, right? And if it works, I'll continue. If not, I'll adjust. But this is not like the 1980s where we were wearing headbands and doing step aerobics and we could afford to go to the gym, right? Everything has changed. And from your perspective in your industry, you also have to make the biggest bang on your buck, right? You want to put your time into, like, when I was saying earlier that they don't care, they're only doing it for money. That's not to say that we all want to make the most money out of the time that we put in. So that's understandable too. But I think there's this like happy spot, this hybrid, where you could provide your clients with in-person direction, because that is necessary, especially when someone's starting out, and then continue to do more for more people through online. And I think that can work for a lot of people, but you still need the right person, because the person, even more so, because the person needs to know how to write a program for you.
Yeah.
So and funny, because I've had somebody say, this is somebody that stepped in between 2 people, was like, well, I have these programs on my site, they're $29 a month. And I was like, okay, but these are like predominantly women that you train who only want a big ass. Those were his clients. They did not want to do any bench press. They didn't want to do any shoulder press. They only wanted to work on their glutes and maybe, maybe their legs. But, and I said, I don't want that program. That's not for me, So my point is, you still need to know what you're doing and customize it, right? For people. The Joe was mentioning, the CSCS and the credentials and all that. But even with that, I think, because I've had, and this person, Bobby, I had somebody who had all that, and clearly was very knowledgeable about, mobility and functional training and all that. I didn't want functional training, and my body was not responding the way I wanted it to during that whole time that I trained with him. And he too decided to leave and do something completely different and just kind of dumped everybody, right? So again, there's some basic skills that are not even fitness specific. They're just like Joe said, like basic professionalism, basic communication, basic listening, and that just, I think, goes across all platforms, all industries.
Yes.
So I think that people need to set goals, be disciplined in the kitchen and about their wellness and their fitness, and then really use social media and use word of mouth, use other professionals in their lives to pinpoint candidates, and then literally interview them like you'd interview a babysitter, like you'd interview, a lawyer.
Yeah.
See who the right fit is, because I think people are just like, oh, your ass looks cute. Who are you training with? I'm going to go to that guy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I want to wrap this podcast up with a question, and I'm going to preface it with law. I think there's a higher degree of professionalism, or at least a standard that's maintained, because to be a lawyer, you have to went to law school somewhere. You have to pass a bar exam, and you're held to some type of ethics standard. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain things that if you do, you get your license taken away. People can report you. You can search all this on the internet. Like, it's not hard for me to do a background check. Like, I'm facing a murder charge, to Google Sara Azari and say, like, hey, is this the person for the job? I can find everything I need to know about you. With training, it's not like that, because you don't have to have a certification, or you could have all the certifications in the world. There's no professional bar that's you could have the worst trainer in the world. They could just quit that gym and go to another gym, and you have no idea. So with all that in mind, we'll start with the positive. What are the top 3 things that you would look for in a trainer, if you're looking for one?
Experience in the realm that in the specific genre, if you will, of fitness that I'm interested in for me, because I've already set the ability to listen and communicate, and not have the biggest ego.
Okay. So
because the ego gets in the way always.
No, for sure, because it's you're going to do what I want you to do, which may not be the smartest thing, right? Nobody knows their body better than you. Conversely, what are your 3 biggest red flags? Because you've told me some horror stories. You're working with people. The 3 biggest red flags that if you're someone out there and this happens, you got to pull the pin on this person.
Yeah, I mean, one red flag is when I look around and I see people pushing a client to lift heavier weight. Their form is gone. I could see them hurting their back, literally. And the trainer is like, keep going, heavy weight, bad form. And I go, you clearly are not. You clearly don't know what's happening, what you're doing, right? And that really upsets me, because I know how horrible it is to be injured, and what a setback that is. And I just I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's. So that really gets under my skin. It's a big red flag. Another red flag is, to be honest, sometimes when people charge too little, I mean, listen, I've had good trainers that have charged fairly, that could have probably charged more. But if it's something really outrageously low, I know that that's probably not the right person. And they're sort of getting their foot in the door. They're trying to get experience, and I'm probably a guinea pig. I'm not really getting what I need from this person. The third thing I think is just somebody who's very resistant, that doesn't want to listen to what I need, and doesn't want to execute something that is right for me, because like Bobby said, like, I know best what I want, and what my body, like what my limitations are, what my body responds to. My biggest pet peeve as a woman is traps, right? I know what makes my traps big. It doesn't take a genius. Anytime your grip is closer and you're lifting, your traps are moving, right? And it's like, they argue with me. They're like, no, that does not get your traps. And I'm like, no, it does, And it's like, that resistance is funny to me. I'm like, what woman wants big ass traps? I don't know. I don't. I want other things to be.
She-Hulk. That's an easy one. She's a lawyer too. The She-Hulk.
bulk, yeah. I'm like, no, the bulk I want elsewhere, not up here.
Well, and I'm really glad you mentioned price, because I always use DJ Khaled as an example for this. If you were to hire DJ Khaled as your music producer, you're going to come up with a theme song for your show. How much do you think a guy like that costs? He works with Jay-Z, he works with Drake, he works with Nas. He's not going to be charging you $100.
Yeah.
Now let's take it to the DJ Khaled, if you will, of the legal world. If I want to hire Sara Azari to get me off a murder charge, and I said, hey, Sarah, what do you cost? If you said you were $50 an hour, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? Like, how are you?
But you're my friend.
I get
You're
it.
my friend. I'd be
I
giving
get
you
it.
friend family
But if I
rate.
didn't know you, I'm imagining your rates for the public are like not $50 an hour. So it's the same thing when you pitch your price. And you take it the other way, if DJ Khaled called me and he said, hey, you're in Men's Health all the time, I want to hire you. If I said, oh, I'm like $25 an hour, I think he'd be turned off. But like, what the hell? What, I thought you were the best. I thought you were in Men's Health all the time. There's a certain thing you pay for what you get. And if you go to a Gold's Gym and you hire a 21-year-old named Stan for $59 an hour, like I don't know what you're going to get. And it's
but Bobby, there are also the audacious people that definitely don't have the experience and are worth $50 an hour, but they're audacious enough to charge $250 an hour.
No,
right?
that's a thing, right? Of like, you know,
and they
charge
go out
my
there
worth
doing that because they think, you know what? This way people think I'm worth it. And you know, even if I dupe 2 or 3 people, I'm still making $250 an hour off of them. So you got to be careful with those people too, but that's easy to spot. I think you start looking at people and listen, it's social media is also bad because not everyone's great. Like I'm horrible at like putting content up, and not everyone's great at showcasing everything in a way that really sends a truthful message about who you are, what your record is like, and you know, history. But you know, to the extent you can rely on that, I think you start looking at this $250 an hour guy, and he looks like he's 25, and you know, 2 years ago, there's a graduation picture that he graduated from the Navy. I mean, you probably can tell that guy's not $250 an hour.
It should be concurrent with it should be concurrent with either your client list or what you've accomplished in the industry.
Exactly.
If I told you, you know, well, actually take a couple of people we know. If you go to a Ben Bruno and he gives you, okay, I charge X amount of dollars. I don't know what Ben charges, 250, 300, 400, whatever it is. You can also look at Ben's client list, and he trains Klay Thompson. He trains Chelsea Handler. He trains Phil Rosenthal. Like you could say, okay, he's worked with a bunch of people. You could do the same thing with Greg. You could do the same thing with Gunnar Peterson. Like there's some pedigree that comes along with the higher price. If someone's charging a high price, like if you're a lawyer and you're charging a high ticket item, but the biggest thing you've ever involved yourself.
Guys, Bobby, those are the guys that you just named, like Ben Bruno. I forgot about Gunnar. You know, they're great at what they do, but they're not for me.
Yeah.
They don't do volume work. They don't do, so I don't care if they charge me $100 an hour.
Yeah, no, but my point with that though was those guys also, you see the big price tag, but they also have a resume to back it up.
I'll add on to that as well. If you sit down and interview Gunnar Peterson, like you're going to understand where his value comes from. You know what I mean? Like number one, me just as a trainer sitting down and talking with that man, it's like, you're going to learn some stuff. And just in that experience, you'd be like, okay, so if I were to hire this guy, that's what I'm getting for that money. That's what separates him from the kid over at Anytime Fitness who just got his ACE certification last weekend.
Well, and to give you another example, Sarah, there's a guy, Mark Palfrey in England, who I'm friends with, who's worked with anybody who's anybody in the quote unquote fitness bodybuilding industry. Like if you're a woman in England and you want to get your pro card, you go see Mark Palfrey. He might be a good fit for you. But my point is his dollar price, his ticket item, whatever you want to call it, he's also got a huge client list. He's also got the trophies. He's also got the professional recommendations. Like it goes along with that price.
What's his name?
His name's Mark Palfrey.
Palfrey?
Yeah, Palfrey. But he's worked with Anybody
That's
who's
good.
you're IFBB fitness pro, you want to make it to the show, you go talk to him. He's been
Yeah,
on
so if
TV a bunch
if
of
I decide to compete next year, I will talk to him.
He'd be a person you want to talk to. At the very least, he could point you who to work with, because
Yeah.
he's got the professional. That's my point. He's got the professional resume.
He's worth his salt, you know.
Go-
And
Yeah.
when you walk
Go
in
with it.
and you say, what do you charge? You don't get sticker shock, because that's what it costs.
Yeah, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Now, I have one more kind of question for you, Sarah. You're a person that can write your own programming. You're a person that trains on your own.
I can't write my own programming, but go ahead.
Give yourself some credit. You know exactly what you're doing. Why don't you just hire somebody to put you through a workout? Or have you ever done that, where you give them the program, you tell them what you're doing, and they are there to plate load, give you a pat on the back, fetch your water?
Oh, yeah.
You
I tried doing that, and it got to be, I'll tell you why it didn't work. Because your body starts to change, and someone, ideally you want the same person that is executing to be writing your program, ideally, because that program needs to be changed. And so based on how long it takes for you to plateau on that program, it's harder for you to then take it. It's hard because it's not under one roof,
So
right?
there's a phrase I know you're familiar with from the legal standpoint, but the person who represents themselves as a fool for a client. You say the same thing about coaching. If you're trying to coach yourself, you have a fool for a client, because you are going to fall into your biases. You are going to fall into, like you said, not wanting to do legs. So you just don't write it into your own program, and you need somebody else who can hold your feet to the fire. And if there was one theme that I see running through this entire conversation that we're having, it's that you should treat your fitness with the same dignity and respect that you would treat your life facing a murder charge. You would not go cheap on a lawyer. You would interview them. You would get recommendations. You would do your homework before you agreed. Do the same thing with your fitness. Why is your fitness less important? You should hold it to that standard.
Yeah, no, definitely. You got to do your homework. And, it's always like you start with the need, you start with the problem, pinpoint what it is you're trying to accomplish, your goal, then do the research, then do the homework. Because just somebody saying this person's great, he only charges me $150, he has time in the morning. Those are not, they're important, but you really need to be able to connect and know that this person will execute what you need, and I have needed different things at different points in my life. I haven't always been into volume work, and so, if I want to go back to any of those old goals, I'd probably be looking for somebody different, so goals change, and so do your trainers, like ultimately who you need to work with.
On that note, let's assume you're a good fitness client. How would you be as a legal client? Like, if you got yourself in some trouble and had to hire a lawyer,
gosh,
how would you be as a legal client? Because Joe just said you can't represent yourself. So what are we dealing with you?
I'd be a terrible client, because I would want to tell you what to do, and it's not my business to tell you what to do, because I'm the client, I'm not the lawyer. The worst thing is trying to keep your claws in something that not being able to surrender because you know too much, But lawyers have represented themselves very badly, so that's not a good. It's not a good plan. Isn't this guy cute though?
Yes, yes. He looks very wise. He's got the whiskers.
So I hope your viewers got something out of this that helps people pick the right fit, for fitness, and not fall into these traps of like cute Instagram photos and, this guy's great. But by the way, I'm also snob with how my trainers look. There are trainers who are great trainers who know what they're doing, but I can't have somebody train me who has like fat man boobs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know what? I don't blame you at all. I've said this for years. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're talking about. but I'm inspired by somebody that leads by example. I'm
Exactly.
inspired by somebody that lives what they preach. Knowledge
Yeah.
is one thing, but that's not the only reason I hire a trainer. I want to be
Exactly.
motivated. I want to get a kick in the ass. I want to look up to the person. I'm with you 100%. Like, don't
Yeah,
tell me what diet.
It's not even being
Yes,
snobby,
go.
like you said. It's that I want to know that you are of the same mindset. You have the same discipline because you look that way. It motivates me. It's more motivator than it is, being snobby. But yeah, that's another thing. So, but don't just look for that, because there are people that look fantastic, but they suck,
Yeah,
So,
but don't think that also doesn't extend to other industries.
Yeah.
yes.
Like, if I'm hiring a lawyer, I want a lawyer that looks good coming to court,
Yeah.
that is organized, that has a nice office, that, like, there's things that I would look for that I
Look
want.
for that.
I don't want somebody showing up to court that hasn't had a shower and hasn't put an outfit together
Yeah.
and doesn't, like, that's something that's important to me. I think it's a representation of who you are as a person.
100%.
This has been a lot of fun, Sarah. Thank you for coming on.
So much fun, you guys. It was so good seeing you.
It was good. It was good. And I expect you fully to be training other people one of these days with your, because
At the Maximus gym.
at the